Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Today we're talking about taking on giants, building the next generation of globally competitive African leaders in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Today we're joined by Dr. Lwidiko Mhamilawa. He is a medical and PhD doctor. Thank you very much. Lwidiko is a lecturer at the Department of Parasitology and Medical Entomology at the Muhimbili Health and Allied Science Institute. As a malaria researcher, Lwidiko is also a co-founder of ProjeKt Inspire, a social enterprise that focuses on introducing a child-centered approach to learning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM subjects, known as project-based integrated learning for both primary, elementary, and secondary school-age children. The objective is to provide proof of concept for the incorporation of the approach into the current education system as a way to equip and inspire the young generation into STEM fields and foster innovation and development in Tanzania. His works have led him to becoming the next Einstein Forum Ambassador to Tanzania and the recipient of the Point of Light Award from Queen Elizabeth. As a Tanzanian born, raised, and educated in both public and private sector in the country, his first-hand experience of the education system and potential room for improvement, especially in areas of STEM education. Through ProjeKt Inspire, Lwidiko and his dedicated team of passionate young STEM professionals have launched the two largest science centers and the first of their kind in Dar es Salaam and Tanga, Tanzania, as the first step toward the dream of building the Disneyland for science in Africa. Welcome, Dr. Lwidiko Edward Mhamilawa.
Thank you very much, Modesta. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today.
I am so thrilled to have you on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I have known you for a while now, and we've had chance to cross paths and refer each other in areas. And I am truly, truly inspired by the work that you do. And I think listening to you today is really going to just put fire to somebody else who's thinking of taking on a topic, and they're thinking, wait a second, who am I to take on something like this? And so 360 leadership community, lean in on this episode as we hear from Lwidiko. He prefers to be called by his first name, on what it takes to build the next generation of global African leaders in STEM. Lwidiko, you decided to take on this cause,
Yep.
but we hear that, people say Africa is too far behind in STEM education, and its shortages in human resources for STEM related careers are too great. Like this is not something that is going to be gnawed at, like broken down anytime soon. Why did you choose to do this?
Well, thank you. First off, it's my own personal experiences within the STEM education, and as you've said, I did from my elementary school to my first degree in medicine in Tanzania, which means I've had first-hand experience on how STEM is taught. And being a medical doctor and PhD scientist as well, I got a bit of exposure on how other countries have done when I was doing my PhD.
Mm,
But the real fire started to burn when I just finished my medical school back in 2013. And
mhm,
really, what ProjeKt Inspire is now is a product of evolution and pivoting, and learning on the way on why or on how things are going. So when we started, it was just the idea of going to schools, talking to kids, telling them how I'm a doctor with my friends, so we had other engineers and computer scientists. We were going through schools and high schools, talking to high schoolers and telling them, look, you can also be a doctor, you can do this, you can do that. But then after a series of these talks, it became evident that there was the thirst for knowing more, knowing how can we get there, how can you be a scientist, and what are the tools that they're missing to actually be world-class scientists. We decided, like, okay, look, we can't just be telling kids you can be a doctor, while the type of learning that they're doing is not really necessarily preparing them to the kind of STEM professionals that they would need to be in the 21st century. So this
Mm,
this led to our very first STEM boot camp back in 2015, 16. We did it in collaboration with the Nelson Mandela Institute, and the idea there was to take these high schoolers and then expose them to a prime university like Nelson Mandela African Institute of Science and Technology, so that they could
mhm.
see where they're going, they could see what is possible, and then start to use this approach of now solving problems and using project-based learning to you take make sense of what they're learning in the classroom. And I think at start, it didn't feel like we were able to change the world per se. It was just a passion project, but with time, we're like,
Mhm.
wait, I think the snowball effect is coming up. We're seeing more young people who are either saying they chose STEM careers, stayed in there because of the type of experiences we gave them. Some went ahead and starting their own, companies, and some we recruited some of them to come be leaders in ProjeKt Inspire from high school students 2016. So that whole positive feedback for consistent work really really fueled the idea, like, okay, wait, we could do this.
Wow. Um, I need to say thank you for when you continue to go to schools and then you realize this is not enough, right?
Yeah,
Somebody else would have said, well, but this is what we can do, right? We're
yeah,
giving back. We're
yeah,
at least doing this.
yeah,
But you sat back, you said, well, this really doesn't do them justice. We're inspiring them, but not, giving them the tools, not showing them. You mentioned the fact that when they went to the first boot camp, they saw the possibilities. It wasn't just the skills, the how, the fact that you gave them vision that people like them could aspire to get into the fields that they did. So thank you for not leaving it at what you were doing and saying, look, I've done my bit of CSR, my community service, giving back. Now, you're saying it's building momentum. What is your vision? What is it that you're looking to do now?
so one of the bigger vision was to influence how education is being done in the country, and quite timely that now the country is changing the education policy. So we've been prepared for this kind of changes to inform what kind of the tools and the approaches that could be done. We've had now we have strategic partnerships with the Tanzania Institute of Education, who are responsible for the curriculums. We now have we've had the Minister for Education come over to visit our science centers, and it was like, oh, now we want another one here in Dodoma. And we each that is a political statements, but also shows the willingness and the inspiration that this work has done towards, at least at the national level. But now the
Mhm.
idea is to go Africa, as you've read in my bio. The idea is to have Disneyland for science in Africa. And whenever I say this, some people might get confused. It's not just a fun place to be, but a place where learning becomes engaging and synonymous to real life activity. So once, to me, the vision is to have all these facilities, at least in each country, but also the biggest one in Africa, where other countries can come and learn and improve their learning pedagogy, especially in the area of STEM, to make sure we are better preparing African children to become better African leaders in STEM, which is you can't ignore that when you're growing an economy. STEM careers are quite critical in improving the economies.
Absolutely. Doing a bit of research, I was looking at, often people look at, the careers of the future, right? And in a list of, let me just even cut down that list to 10. Seven of the top careers of the future require STEM related education,
Yeah,
right?
indeed,
I
indeed.
think, yeah. And one of them that I said, okay, let's this is in a grade, that was CEO, but that could well be a CEO that has STEM related, right? Especially if they're in technical fields, whether it's manufacturing or extractives, which are really key in our context. Or even, wait a second, careers are transferable, right? Professions are transferable, so it does not hurt for you to have a STEM related background. But then we have also seen, I think it was uh, a World Bank reference that Africa is really trailing behind on STEM related education. And there are a couple of things you said right now, and you said them at different points in our conversation. You said, you saw gaps and you saw areas of improvement in the education system, and then you've actually been mentioning a couple of things that you think are critical then to building the kind of education and capabilities for competitive STEM related careers. What would you say a top three or top five that you have introduced and have seen to improve competence and effectiveness that our educational systems don't often have?
Right. So thank you for that. One part which is very, very key to our approach is helping students understand that the world does not exist in silos, right?
Mm,
So the approach in our learning right now is everything is in silos. So like we do mathematics and engineering and technology, or in physics and chemistry,
mm,
but once you're in a physics class or chemistry class, geography does not have any interplay with that, right?
mm,
But what we've tried to do is to make sure that kids can think holistically when it comes to learning. I'll give you one example, right? If you take children to the ocean and for a field trip, you can teach math, physics, geography, history, and biology during that one field trip. I'll tell you how. Put them in a group, maybe three, four groups. Give them a rope, a 1 meter long rope, and then tell them to measure 1 square meter of space in the beach, right? That already, I mean, most people have a difficult time getting to understand what is a square meter anyway. So with 1 meter rope, they can start learning what is a square meter to measure, and then they could create a square meter of that space, and then on that land, you tell them to, you know, count how many life forms are there, right? How many plants, how many, rocks, how many, animals or fish, whatever. And then they create a tally sheet, which is statistics, but also it's in biology, it's classification. And if they do the stones, the coral reefs, etc., that's also geography, learning different concepts. Getting them to integrate this learning makes it much more meaningful, and they can connect to the the real life situation on a day-to-day basis. That way, the education they're getting, even at a primary school level or secondary school level, they can get them to develop solutions for their community. We have had I mention maybe three quick examples. One is there's one kid in Tanga where our first STEM park was built. He was a class 3, which is elementary. So class 4 students came to the park the very first day when it opened, and he's never seen a microscope before, has never seen a lab before, and we get an opportunity to expose him to the microscope, and he spent almost 4 hours under that microscope, pulling his hair out, looking for bugs, hitting spiders on the corners of the roofs, and he was so fascinated in such a way that he was hooked. So since then, he was coming there every day. Now he moved his interest from the biology to, now he created this walking stick for the blind, which when you almost hit the obstacle, it vibrates. So all this is use all the sensors, the programming, the coding, and that was, to me, was fascinating to see. This is now he's just finished class 7, and the way he's now transformed to being a different kind of person who was, because of this exposure, this different type of approach to learning, has really
mm,
changed him from what he was to what he can possibly be, and see what is happening. But another good example of one of the very first managers of the STEM park itself, who was a student, we recruited him when he was in high school, and he worked with us for almost 5 years. Now he's has his own company that he recycles laptop batteries to creating alternative sources of energy, and he, he's now popular. He got all this, attention from the media. He's doing a pretty good job from Kamala Harris and endorsements and things like that. And you're seeing these,
Wow.
transformative leaders who are actually taking steps into changing their own lives, but also because of the different type of exposure of learning really has changed how they're building their industries. And some of them who are also very proud of kids who were through our programs, and now they're in the program. So 90% of the staff at ProjeKt Inspire are former uh, attendance of the boot camps of the recruits from the high school we visited and things like that. Now they have they want their STEM degrees, and they've decided to work with us in this area, which I think is one of the biggest success for us in terms of creating a pipeline of like a career ladder in STEM. So I think to me the seeing these changes, seeing this snowballing that's happening, really is quite giving us more energy to keep on doing more work.
This is phenomenal. And hence now, I see that, the Disneyland analogy that you're making. You're saying let it be, well, fun, but also practical, that people can see, students can see its relevance to day-to-day life, and not study not study STEM subjects in silos, but to then just think of solutions. So with a fifth of the global population being under 25 and residing in sub-Saharan Africa, we're now not just talking about the difference we want to make in our country, or maybe, or rather, for our country, Tanzania, or for our continent, Africa. We're actually saying we're looking for the kind of people that will drive, that will transform the globe and drive competitiveness for global solutions, right? It's no longer just about our citizen. We're saying the potential to come out of Africa is really to be the solution for the world, in the coming century. So now my question then is, I heard you mention the Minister of Education coming in. What then would you say are the critical success factors if this truly is going to be an effort to transform the globe, and to drive economic competitiveness? Well, I'm assuming it's not going to be institutions doing this on their own, right? If this is actually going to be a global move, and a global competitiveness agenda.
True, Modesty, you've said it really well. What we need right now is to have not only just, I mean, solutions for Africa from Africa. That's one part, but then solutions for the world from Africa, and this can only happen if we take advantage of the opportunities that are available right now. We Simple example. I mean, this is such a cliche example, but we can leapfrog right
Mm.
now, and there are opportunities to leapfrog from seeing the gaps that we have right now in terms of learning opportunities, in terms of this, in the technologies that are available. So one of the factors, so it's a factors. One of the factors that it is already a low hanging
Mhm.
fruit is that the technology and access to information is so easy in such a way that we just only need very small amount of tools and thought processes to help us leapfrog from our original type of teaching to the new type of teaching, which is going to inspire more kids. So political will is a second success factor, right? So the first one was the low hanging fruit of the availability of technology and information that can help us change. But then the second part is the political will, which I think within this framework, we've seen the country, at least for the past year or two, we've seen the politicians in Tanzania trying to make radical changes in the education system, and I think this is critical to have that, because this will be a big factor when it comes to the third part of the success factor, which is investment. So once we have policies that are accommodative of this different approaches of learning, it's going to be even easier to lobby for, further investment from within the country or
Mm.
outside to invest in better learning environments, and in more sophisticated tools. I saw yesterday the Ministry of Education exploring how to teach virtual reality, using virtual reality in teaching some vocational schools. And I think these kind of political wills is another huge factor that is going to make sure is going to help fast track this coverage um, of the gap that we have. And then again, the last part I think is the incentives from making the STEM education much more what we say. Yeah, I think making more lucrative to be
Yeah.
into the STEM fields. One, showing that you can actually get a good pay if you're really pretty good at that, but also the transferability that you said earlier on, and that showing that once you have a STEM degree, it's relatively easier to get into many other avenues. When I was in Form 4, just about to go to high
Mm.
school, I was pretty good in either art subject and science subjects, and I asked my dad, um, what where should I go? Should I do the history, geography, and language to be to the arts line or the science line? And he 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 said something very funny, that you just collect the many keys that you have so that you can open as many doors as you can. By then, once you and that becomes the most critical part. So if you do the sciences, it'll be even easier for you to go to do law or business or whatever later
Mm.
on. But it's trickier to do it the other way around. So this is the fourth part I was saying, that communicating and making you know information to the young people that it is difficult, it could be, but it is much more rewarding, and it can be made easier to learn science. And I think these factors are great. I think to me these four factors are quite critical. Working on the low hanging fruits, the political
Mm.
will, the investments, and making it communicating this to the kids to make science or STEM more attractive.
This is brilliant. I want to tell you, I'm currently doing a business degree, and I have a legal background, right? I'm doing a business degree, and where am I floundering the most? Uh, Quantitative and qualitative analysis. You know, thinking through operational processes. I mean, the types of things that anybody else with a computer science or an engineering or mathematical, STEM related career, they're just flying through. And so I can see, and this is business, by the way. No one's telling me to go into a science related business. No, but this is just for you to succeed as a business leader in general. Uh, so I love the advice that your dad gave you. Absolutely spot on. If you do the science, it's more transferable than the other way around. And now we're realizing just the premium there is when you're looking at. I mentioned top 10, maybe 7 out of 10 are science related. When you go to 20, when I broadened that list to 20, it was top 15. So there you go, and the other ones, they're actually kinda ambiguous as well. It might be 18 out of 20 of future careers, are STEM related. So now, the 360 leadership community really is leaders from across sectors that are purpose driven and truly believe that you can do more than just for me and mine. You can live a life of not just influence, but having a significant impact in your community, nation, and above. What would you say? To a leader that really would also like to take on a systemic challenge, but they truly fear that this might be too much for me?
Mm. Oh, I would borrow from Nike. Just do it, and I think that's quite a that's quite a deep question, and it makes me think of moments where I would want to throw the towel in, because definitely there are moments in taking up such a such a big goal. You there are moments of if you don't, if it's not really purpose
Yeah.
driven, this is not really something that is the dream that keeps you awake at night. Um, then it might, we will hit moments where it's a bit challenging than not to
Mhm.
go through. So one is to be truthful to yourself that this can be hard, and when it gets hard, how do you navigate this space? So one would be to have very good support systems, mentors, people who have gone ahead into these areas and face these challenges, and have so form a cohort, or could be of people who would be able to support you, but
Mhm.
in different avenues, right? So one, people who are very far ahead from you. Two, people at your level you're starting with, where you can share challenges. You could have experiences and sharing experiences, and have people who you are um, inspiring from below, right? So they look up to you, so that they can, when you wake up in the morning and say, "This is something that I want to do," you look at people below. They're like, okay, they motivate you to do it. And I think, to me, having those three sets of people have been extremely useful when it comes to tackling challenges like this, because the people who are ahead of me, I've had in my board of trustees, Project Inspire, I've had very senior vice chancellors from universities, very senior engineers, people who have been doing this work for some time, and they can tell you stories of how it could be done, of how they failed on some places, and this can be really motivating to want to move forward. So these are the people who pull you forward, and the support system of peers. I started this with a lot of colleagues who are my classmates and age mates, who we also are working towards similar changes in this ecosystem, and have been part of the ecosystem of
Mm.
many change makers, been part of the global shapers community, been part of the Booney Hub, been part of the Next Nation Forum ambassadors, and these, I think, these are the belonging to these kind of societies and communities inspire you to say, okay, I have my colleagues who are also trying to push through these things, and these are angels I could touch, if you may. These are people who can inspire you to do work, because you can see them also trying to work on these areas. In the course of the friends I'm having
Mm.
from even the global shaper community, people are doing amazing work in their spheres of influence. So this becomes another great opportunity to do. And then the last group, as I was just describing, Project Inspire is full of the young people who were previously exposed to Project Inspire's work, and they like what we do, and they decided to come join to work with us. So whenever you look at them and say, okay, this is the people I'm doing for. So you need to keep going, and then slowly one positive thing happens after the other, and then uh, it becomes quite a beautiful journey, if you sum it up. Yeah.
Mm. Now, in case someone's like, that sounds really inspiring, that sounds good, and those are kind of like high and lofty pointers there.
Mm.
What did it look like, for instance, for you and your colleagues to say, we're going to start going to school? What did you have to do to get access to going to schools?
Uh, I was tired after finishing my medical degree, so I took a gap year. That's one. I didn't, after finishing my medicine, I didn't do internship for 1 year, and it was during that time when I was also transitioning from being a national president of Youth of United Nations Association, UNA,
Hmm.
and so having experience in that aspect, and we've had with UNA by then, we had access to schools. So school clubs. The Youth of United Nations Association had a lot of UN clubs in schools and UN chapters in universities, and I was a member of this community up until being the national president of that. So it was relatively easy to say, okay, now I'm in my gap year, and what should I do? Maybe I should just go to schools and inspire kids. And I invited a few of my friends who were also in their summer breaks from college or things like that. And they're like, yeah, we're bored at home, let's just go around. And so we started with schools where we were alma mater from, right? So I studied Kibaha Secondary School. I studied St. Anthony's. Other were coming from Marian, coming from other schools. So the groups that we had, friends, were like, okay, let's go back to our schools, but let's go together, right? So I would grab, we were 10 of us going from coming to Kiba of different profession and things like that. So that's how we sort of started. Went to one school, second school, third school, fourth school, and we're like, yeah, we like this. Let's keep on doing more schools. And we reached a point we didn't have enough money to go to more schools. People would go and ask for their parents, can I get, money for fuel? Can I borrow your car? And that's how sort of how the team built up when we started. And the kind of reception that we got from the students and how they reacted to our stories and our career guidances that we're giving them really became a key factor to helping us move forward.
Wow. Next thing,
Yeah.
how then did you go from you're at the schools and you realize it's not enough to inspire, and we need to show them how, and how then did you get into a partnership with the Nelson Mandela Institute of Science and Technology? Just I'm asking you these questions just so that somebody else doesn't overthink it. You said just don't overthink it. But what would it look like in practice? What did you do?
Uh, so the part of that was knocking on the door, right? So I went in, and quite a good feedback after that. So I went I heard about the Nelson Mandela. It was new then, and I was in Arusha, I think, because um, there was a cholera outbreak, I think, by that time in Arusha, and I was now I've just moved back into my internship. I just finished it a year later. That's 2016. And while I was there, discussing with
Mhm.
my partners that we need to do some form of a boot camp, which is now doing more for these kids, right? And the idea was we don't want to do a boot camp in a school
Mm,
because they've been in a school environment. So, what kind of universities should we look for, or places which will be inspiring? So, Nelson Mandela came into mind, and I was in Arusha back then. So, I drove there and knocked the door, literally just knocked the door and went in and said, hi, here's the idea I have, and you guys, would you be interested to partner? I don't have any money. Can you give us free dormitories, and maybe when the universities close we can bring high school students, etc., etc.
mm,
So I think one other thing that I think it's very,
mm,
very underrated, for leaders, ability to communicate your ideas
mhm,
clearly. And I think that is one thing that I think a lot of leaders need to work on, or young people need to work on, because once you're able to communicate clearly, either verbally or written, or it sets you apart really well, because people can understand what you're talking about, and they can follow, and they can, agree or disagree, or they can see themselves. There are a lot of, there's an entire conversation around how to be a good communicator. But that's one. So I walked in there, and it took a few minutes when I say
yes.
minutes, I mean days, to go back and forth and, showing them. And this was a new idea for them, and they were new university. So what I sold to them was, look, these high school students are your potential
Mm,
clients eventually when they come. So we don't bringing you potential business eventually of subsequent students who would come here. So that conversation really led to, more and more talks with them, and eventually they were like, okay, let's try this out. And we had a boot camp of more than 70 kids, with a budget of only $500 for a whole week. with that paid only for food, right? And but the rest of the materials and equipment and things like that were either donated by the university, or the Pepsi or whatever. So there's that part that came in place. But now the next year, which is another sad story, is the university policy and administration changed. So they were no longer interested to do it again the next year with us, but we were interested to do it every year, right? So I was in a position where I have 350 applications from students who want to do a boot camp. I have no venue. Um, and I have no, we don't have money for the boot camp. And again, I was in Bagamoyo, doing some of my medical work, and I just walked into Marian University College, Maruko by then, and
Wow.
spoke to the VC, and he was like, "Yeah, great, come over, do it here." So the second year we do it at Marian University College for 2 years in a row, and the next year we do it at St. Joseph University. So I think the key part here is,
Mm,
as I said, just do it in terms of
right.
swallow your pride, get your guts,
Mm,
go. What's the worst thing that can happen? They can kill you. They just say no, and
right.
if they say no, then it wouldn't be any different from if you didn't go to ask, right? So the moment you go and ask, the moment you walk in and you do your pitch, or you already increase your likelihood of being accepted by 50%, all things considered. But if you don't, then your likelihood of getting accepted is zero.
I love that. A true scientist. All right. Last one is then how did you go from that to having the Minister of Education coming to visit and even challenging you to start yet a third um, project in Dodoma?
Yeah, so I think that was a long move. So we have been looking for the Minister for Education for years, right? Trying to see, even when we started, trying to see how can we communicate this and show them what we're trying to do. But we got some funding to do these STEM parks, and I think they're phenomenal. And after a few meetings with the aides and himself, we're like, okay, come, please, come see what we do. Come see what we do. He's like, okay, I see. I think I have an idea of what you're doing, but let me come see over. So he had a tour in Tanga, and he scheduled to have. He spent, I think, 4 hours STEM park, and I think it was, you know, fascinated with the space. I think that was one of the biggest days of our lives as ProjeKt Inspire and myself, to have the minister come in and see this work. And I think the other part is luck, which I think, to me, I define luck as, opportunity meets preparedness. We were prepared, and the opportunity came that the country is looking into new ways of approaching education, specifically STEM. So we were, best positioned to be a case study for them. So that's another thing that I think attracted him to say, okay, let me go and see what you're talking about. And yeah, so that's where we are right now, with and how we got him to come over, and he's still really quite interested to push through this.
This is phenomenal. So taking on Africa, how are you going to take on a slice of this continent called Africa? What is your plan?
So it's a long game. One is to look for, and we've already started to get some strategic partnerships with other like-minded organizations and people who are interested in improving the STEM education. We have partnership with people from Ghana who are interested to work with us, from Zimbabwe as well, and these. This helps us to take of the model now that we have of the STEM parks, and the and think of it like KFC, right? But for science education, right? So this model can be replicated easily as a franchise to any other country and place, and that, I think, has been, will be the best way to sort of get the word out and get other organizations involved. So working with the diaspora as well, like, who have connections in many other places has been quite another fruitful will. I think it's part of the plan, but also uh, resource mobilization, which is the biggest part of this. A lot of part of some of the funding we have come from philanthropies and organizations, which I think is critical to look at this as a social investment for the future of the
Mm.
continent. So continuing to do strategic partnerships with organizations, people who are like-minded, having conversations with interesting people like Modesta. Here we actually, I know there are many listeners within of the 360 leadership community where they would be, if they'd be interested to within work with us. I think we're quite open-minded for it.
This is brilliant. So this is what I'm hearing. I'm truly hearing a leader speak about starting the reason why I was asking these last questions is so that we do not overthink and we do not
Mm,
complicate things, right? um
yeah,
there
true.
is there is a passion, there is a problem that you see, and you can start raw. You can start with what you have, and you had a community of people, and you went out. um Having done that, you weren't satisfied. And I think having this innate dissatisfaction is just a thing with leadership, right? It's not enough to do the minimum. I've seen, I cannot unsee what I've seen now. I stepped out, I've seen it, and I cannot unsee that I need to do something. And leadership starts that way. I need to do something. Fine, I'll get other people, but I cannot count myself out. And then when you saw that more needed to be done, you took a risk. And I love how you just went in and said, look, if you don't do anything, probability of you getting a positive is 100% zero. There's zero chances. But if you just by stepping out, it's 50-50 already, right? And learn how to communicate effectively, you're stacking the odds for you. Um, and I am listening to you, and the stereotype we often have of scientists and scientific minds, like you guys need to make sure you've created a model, you've done the analysis, you've looked at the probabilities. Like you're not going to take a step unless you've got the facts straight and the odds for you. But I'm hearing a leader, right, regardless of the field, who's saying there is a challenge. Somebody has to do it, and I'm going to put my hand up and say I'm that somebody. And as you stepped out, you refined what it is you do, but you also then, I think, vision sometimes challenges to prove we're really serious about them, right? Like when you start to step out, that vision will challenge you. Like, are you for real, right? And you have to shaking knees and everything and say, I am serious about you. Let's do this. And the resources and the people will come in when opportunity meets preparedness. Tell me of things that you now, with hindsight, would have done differently. Maybe you would have accelerated, maybe you would have avoided some pitfalls. What are some leadership lessons that you think, um, looking back now, you would have done differently with what you're doing?
I think one of the biggest things that came into my mind recently is I've never really gone to leadership school per se, right? And maybe there are some things once you go to actually learn from a school of leadership, and the that you would help you see things and plan things differently. But really, that really haunts me at the moment. So I'm actively looking for, now I'm trying to get into a leadership school like Ungozi, and I've seen some of your great work I've been trying to get to engage with, and I think that is one thing I think I would have done differently. The second thing is I would have gotten a
Mm,
coach quite early on, and I think that would have cut a lot of my pain and learning through that I had to do the hard way. And right now, I'm working with a coach, and my life is
mm,
much better than I had anticipated before. So actually, for a leader to actually go and sit down and learn, the different aspects of becoming a leader and what are the issues that you need to deal with and case studies, that I think is something I would have done differently, which I'm trying to do now, but also getting a coach or a mentor, someone who we could you know, paid or unpaid, whatever, but someone who would really you're working with as a coach, because every teams need coaches. Everybody, even in individual level, I think having a coach is really not emphasized enough, at least from the context of where many of Tanzanian African leaders come from. So I think that's those two would have been great things to do early on. But one other thing that I think it's something I think I would have done differently. Maybe I think what it is now, what ProjeKt Inspire is now, and what I am now is a product of the things and decisions I've made over the years. And one of my philosophy has been uh, jumping off a cliff and building an airplane on the way down, and that frustrates some of my team members because just do it, and then we'll optimize as we go. And I think maybe re-looking at that strategy, may continue with that, but then re-looking at, okay, can we have at least a prototype of a plane and then go with it, as we go, right? Before, instead of just jumping off and that. So those are, I think, the three things that I think they're quite critical in the success of whatever. And for us, looking in hindsight, I think there are moments where I would have beat myself up in terms of things are not moving as fast as I want or as good as I want or things like that. But I've learned from the scientific perspective, if you want 9 kids, you would have to wait 9 months 9 times, not nine. The things will just take time, right? So, and I think the patience and is quite being patient with yourself is extremely critical.
This is so good. Oh, Lwidiko, it's been amazing having this conversation with you, seeing where you started off just as an individual with a passion and seeing a problem and choosing to go all the way with it. And then, now here we are excited to have you on our podcast and interview you and be associated with you. But it's really important for people to understand it doesn't start out in the limelight and you've got these international partners and philanthropists coming in. It starts with you, and whatever you're seeing around you, if it gets to you, it's probably pointing that you're the person to run with
Mhm.
it. Now, should people want to reach out to you, should our 360 leadership community want to reach out to you, what can they reach out to you for, and where can they find you?
So I am on LinkedIn. We can connect there. My name's on LinkedIn, Lwidiko Edward Mhamilawa. That's, I think, the easiest part. I believe most of the people in 360 are there, but also I can share with you my email address as well, which is ProjeKt Inspire with a K at gmail.com, not C. Um, but I think that's how you could reach me. But then with from what avenues? One, I'm still looking for strategic partners in areas where we could improve and optimize the business development. So that part is extremely critical for me. And if there's any leader in this area who's amazing at business development, I'll be more than happy to engage and work with them to be able to scale up to the next level where we're now looking in towards Africa. And the second part, we're still looking for resources, be it financial or volunteer work or things like that. We're still looking into expanding some of our works. So the one thing that I think we may have not mentioned is with the two science centers that we have, we try as much as possible to make them accessible for both public and private school kids, but there are costs to operate that. So we do strategic partnerships with private entities and companies, or we would take the CSR burden, and when it comes to maybe they're looking into education, and then we help them implement that with the access of schools and places that we have. And I think that's another avenue that will be quite interested to help them, to help these leaders do much more rewarding CSR work, if any. And the last part is, if there are any communities around of leaders that you think it would be awesome for me to join in, please holler at your boy.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And I truly, truly hope that our, you know, we have listeners from all over the world, that they would be open to connecting with you, to partnering with you. And like you said, you're looking to expand across the continent, right? So you could share your model elsewhere for somebody who's listening, who's thinking, I'd like us to do something similar to this, and they could reach out to you for that as well. So thank you again, Dr. Lwidiko Edward Mhamilawa, who's the director and co-founder of ProjeKt Inspire, for sharing your journey and your vision and courage on taking on giants, by building the next generation of globally competitive African leaders in STEM. I wish you all the very best in what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Modesta. It has been quite a good morning to have this conversation with
I am so grateful. Thank you again. So, this has been a phenomenal episode of the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. If you haven't already, please do follow us wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it be Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube. It will be Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast that you'll be looking out for. One thing we're asking listeners to do now that our community is growing all the more is leave a review. You've listened to this episode, it has spoken to you, and you're inspired or you're challenged. You found some tips and steps you can take. Please do send a review of your experience with the podcast. It's really going to speak volumes. It'll help us, but it'll also help other people choose between all the different options of leadership podcasts out there and zero in on this one. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.